Hello everybody, my name is Mike Geig. Welcome to another live session on Unity. So before we start today, interestingly enough, I completely forgot to promote this session. So our attendance is actually rather low because I imagine not a lot of people knew about this. We're also having quite a bit of lag in on Twitch here. So I'm kind of curious. Normally we have about 400 people to start. Today we only have about 124, obviously because I forgot to promote it. So I'm curious as to maybe starting a vote and seeing if we want to do the scripting primer today, which is basically we're just going to be covering if statements and loops. Scripting primer is all about programming and it's very slow. It's a chance to ask questions. Or if you want to turn this into more of a hangout where you can just sort of ask questions about anything, and I'll push the scripting primer till later. So that we can adequately promote it and get the people to watch it who need to watch it. So anyway, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. I obviously have to watch chat here. There's going to be quite a bit of a delay. We're sitting at about like a 20-second delay with Twitch these days. When we first started streaming, we had a we had a delay of about like 5 seconds, and now we're like a delay of 20 seconds every time. Okay, so far I'm seeing just people talking about a hangout as opposed to scripting. So if we didn't do the scripting primer, we would do the scripting primer next Monday. So just a week from today. I normally do Mondays, but I just completely forgot to promote it. And I just sent a tweet out a little while ago. But normally I have Unity promote it, and it's on Facebook and everything, and all that stuff. Yeah, my name is Mike Geig. I do work for Unity. I am a screencaster with the Learn team, and so this is part of my job is doing these live sessions and hanging out and do all that stuff. So. Yeah, so it seems like a majority of people are saying wait. I'm inclined to agree. I'd hate to give the priming. The priming sessions, the primers, are specifically about allowing you to ask questions about programming topics and me answering them. So if all the people who have questions aren't here, then it's kind of a pointless session. So it seems like pretty unanimous that we'll push the scripting primer off till next week. Someone asked, Mart Forg asked why there was no session last week, and that is because with Global Game Jam finishing up on Sunday, and then me traveling to San Francisco on Tuesday, I just did not have time to do a session. So I apologize for that. If you're not sure when stuff is going on, here, let me pull up the website. We have our live training website here, which I'll pull up right here. Which is basically, you can see what's coming up. We can see that the scripting primer is live now. I only have 2 sessions lined up right now, which is a scripting primer this week, which I'm going to end up moving to next week, and then the scene composition next week, which will go to the week after that. So check this site if you ever want to see what's coming up. It's just unity3d.com/learn/live-training. And that's where we put all our stuff. You can also go to the archives and see all of the previous sessions and stuff like that. So it's actually pretty slick. Okay, let's see here. I'm just reading through chat now. Can't you make so you can use player prefs to save a whole level and load a level? This is possible. Do a live tutorial on it. We can do player prefs to save whole levels and stuff like that, but that's really kind of a bad way of handling that. Let me catch up with chat, and if there's nothing pressing, then maybe I can I'll show you how to do that. Another way to do that. Let's see. Can we get even more specific from stuff from previous tutorials? Absolutely. If you want me to cover JavaScript, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time reading your name since it's like light green. If you want me to cover stuff in JavaScript, I certainly can. I'm not great with JavaScript, but I can certainly do most programming in JavaScript. Yes, you can open chat in a new window. I don't know how, but there's a pop-up option button near the bottom. I did all like you in the endless runner last session, but I can't see a score anywhere on the screen. I don't know what's wrong. Chances are your void on GUI method may be spelled wrong or wrong capitalization or something like that. Otherwise, you'd be able to see it. Good job on Global Game Jam. Played your game. It was frustrating and awesome at the same time. Well, thank you, Phoenix Lloyd. Appreciate that. I wanted to make a game as violent as possible for the Global Game Jam, and I feel I did a pretty pretty good job. I had a lot of fun with the blood and stuff on that. Let's see here. How about the Super Bowl win any money? I didn't even watch the Super Bowl. I watched like maybe the first couple minutes of it, and then I watched Man of Tai Chi instead because I'm a big Kung Fu movie fan. So that was my evening. Can you somehow implement Unity Pro Water using the free version? No, you cannot. Only because Unity Pro Water uses render textures to get the sky reflected on the surface of the water, and render textures are a Unity Pro only feature. So you can achieve a water effect for sure, but you can't achieve Pro Water using Unity Free, and that's why, render textures. Have you ever animated first-person shooter hands? No, I don't animate at all. I'm not an artist in any way, shape, or form. So if it comes to art, that's not me. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm also curious about player prefs and other saving alternatives. Sure, I'll show you that. We ever do a shader tutorial? So shaders are stupidly hard. That's not true. They're not stupidly hard. You just have to learn the lingo. I'd love to do a shader tutorial. It's one of those things that I've just got to get up to speed with it. I believe there's something called a Unity shader cookbook. I just do a Google search for something similar to that, and you'll find an awesome book on doing shaders. But yeah, I'd love to do a live session on shaders eventually. Let's see here. Cool. I can't do a shader tutorial today, but eventually I certainly can. Shaders are awesome. You can do crazy cool stuff with it, but it's one of those things I've just never really had time to like dig in. Let's see. Would you show us how you did the blood splatter? So the blood splatter is basically just a particle effect. I actually opened Photoshop and I drew some blood spatter as white on a transparent background, and I made that my particles, and then I just made them red with the particle engine and just sort of threw them onto the ground. It was actually really simple, but it had a really neat effect. Will you be doing a live session dedicated to mobile devices? I get that a lot, and the problem is that you guys can't see my phone or my tablet, right? You can only see my screen. So if I did a mobile session, you wouldn't be able to see my device, right? So it's kind of weird like that. I mean, I can talk about screen inputs and I can talk to you about the accelerometer. Sure, I mean, I can certainly do that. It's just a matter of you actually being able to see the end result is kind of, you're not going to be able to see it. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure I can put something together. Mobile development is actually really, really simple, which is kind of why I haven't done it so far. I mean, it's just, there's like basically two differences. There's the screen touch input and there's the accelerometer, and you get those two things and you're kind of done. And then mobile optimization is also important, but it's not that hard once you get sort of the basic principles down. But we could certainly talk about that. How about dirty lens effect in post-processing C#? I don't know what that means by dirty lens effect, so if you can give me a little bit more details, I could probably help you out there. 2D tutorial for Android character movements. Honestly, if we did, I wouldn't do Android or iOS. I would just do mobile because they're all exactly the same. Both have touchscreen and both have accelerometers, and so you can kind of just do all mobile devices in one video because they're really not any different. The only difference would be screen sizes, and I can show you how to do different screen sizes. That's easy too. Will I ever be doing a tutorial that covers game structure and architecture? Yeah, that's actually something we've been kicking around internally, a tutorial on game structure and architecture. What we need to do first is nail down what exactly that means, right? Game structure and architecture is kind of like, well, what is that, right? And it's kind of different for everybody. And so, yes, that's something we've talked about, and once we can kind of clarify what we mean by that, what we mean by workflow. I was thinking about doing like a best practices video, like how to do object pooling, how to do save states, how to do, some of these other things. And I guess that might fall into that, but otherwise we'd have to define it a little bit more. Any idea what to do about a buggy frame flashing when I change screen orientation at runtime? No, I mean, it really depends on your project. I mean, feel free to hit me up on Twitter and ask me any questions. Speaking of Twitter, let me just toss that up there. I always do my spiel. Follow us on at Unity3D, at Mike Geig, which is me, at Will Goldstone, or at The Ant Ranch. if you have any questions or comments, whatever. So about your buggy frame flashing, feel free to hit me up about that on Twitter or my email, mike@unity3d.com, and we could take a look at there. Let's see. Yeah, mobile phone. I thought we had something like a phone emulator to test mobile dev. So what we have in Unity is we have the Unity remote, which allows us to use our phone and stream content from Unity and use our phone as a controller, which is how I will show you guys how to use it. It can be a little tricky to get set up, but once it's set up, it's actually really fantastic. I love it. Question, how to do bullet holes in the walls or floor? Decals are probably the easiest way. You just apply a texture decal to that spot. I'd have to look up how to do that because it's been a while, but that's actually fairly simple too. You just get a collision from array and do like hit that point and put a decal there. Is there a tutorial on best practices of singleton implementation? Yeah, well, not really. I mean, we could do one, but it all depends on what you really want to do a singleton for. Singletons in Unity, I mean, you have to have a very specific reason to use one, right? And so I don't necessarily know why we want to bother. Oh man, the chat's going too fast. Let's see here, I'm just going to scroll up a bit. How about simple server client movement implementation with interpolation? That would be useful. We do also want to do a networking one, so that's on the list. So yes, networking would be something we'd look at doing. So yeah. We can't control particles, and so one of the questions is look for an easy way to control particle system prefab with JavaScript. I'm assuming you want to control the particles. You can't with scripting yet. That might be a feature in the future. Let's see. Okay, yeah, just reading through chat here. I'm confused with the difference between animator and animation. I have a 2D scene with a few 2D sprites with animations made with the animator tool, as you do in the last tutorials, and I need all of them to play back with just one click, but I don't know how to do this with script. So basically you build a bunch of animations, which are files that have some data about what an animation is. The animator is an animator controller. It's a state machine. Basically determines which what do I want to say? Which animation is playing at which time, right? And that's it. So the animator just contains a bunch of animations and just determines when they're played. We actually, along those lines, I can't pronounce your name, Kui Studios or whatever. We just released 10 videos on animation covering the animation and animator yesterday. So 10 whole videos, all about that. It's beginner level. Check it out. Let's see here. Information about 4 multiplayer game with camera on 4 players with zoom, like Micro Machine on PlayStation. I've never played Micro Machine, so I'm not really sure. Doing 4 players with all this stuff, that's probably too complicated for a simple live session. I'd probably just do 2 players and let you go from there. What do I think about the new Twitter look? Is it different? I haven't looked. I use TweetDeck, so I didn't know that it was different. So I'm gonna say it looks great, I guess. Okay, so I'm looking for an easy way to save a lot of data. So yeah, today I will cover for you how we can store a lot of data, and it's actually really, really simple and easy, and that sort of thing. As someone with general C# dev experience but no specific gaming experience, what areas of game physics have the steepest learning curve? Not physics specifically, but quaternions. Quaternions have the steepest learning curve, that and shaders, because it's just a matter of wrapping your head around it. Once you get those, everything else is really just kind of downhill. Game development is really not any different than any other kind of development, really. It's just about learning the rules of your system and working with those. Why is marked as legacy in the doc? But why the animation window? So the animation window isn't legacy, but the old animation system is. So the animation component and stuff like that, everything is handled through animators now. So the window itself is not legacy. We use the window all the time, but the animation class and the animation component is legacy. Question, my on mouse enter function isn't called when screen.lock cursor equals true. Do you know why it might cause this? So when I do screen.lock cursor equals true, the mouse gets locked to the center of the screen and doesn't ever move. So your mouse won't enter anything because your mouse cannot move because it's locked. So if you need your mouse to move, you might want to try something along the lines of hide cursor as opposed to lock cursor. Lock cursor prevents it from moving. How do I use a custom library in Unity, and where must you place it? That's not something I've actually done. I believe it requires Pro to pull in a custom library. Not entirely certain. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, though, I can look further into that and let you know. How to get input from PlayStation Move or Xbox Kinect. So you will want. So I've done Kinect before. I've never done Move, and it's been so long since I've done Kinect. I made a boxing simulation using the Kinect with Unity a couple years ago, back when it was not the Xbox One Kinect, but the developer Kinect from the 360. And at the time, I used OpenNI and I can't remember. It's been so long. I used some external tools that kind of implemented a lot of it for me. So you'd have to Google that. It's been a really long time. Let's see. How to solve the stuttering problem in Unity 3D when moving an object using math.lerp or mathf.smoothDam. There shouldn't be a stuttering problem. If you're having a stuttering problem, feel free to message me or send me your project or something like that. I can take a look at it. Does Unity have the power to control MySQL or SQL? I'm not sure what you mean by the power to control it, but you can connect to a SQL database in that, I guess. So I'm not really sure what you mean by control it. Just got Unity but have no knowledge about it whatsoever. Could you please show or explain the basics? Check out my live sessions, which cover the basics. I mean, there's hours of video there that'll show you everything you need. A lot better than I could do here in just a couple minutes. So please feel free to check out the archive live sessions. There's tons of data there. Sorry, I don't want to do all the basic stuff right now, but there's some good information there. Is there a C# tutorial on how to use the script on trigger, like instantiate object when the player hit object? Yeah, it's pretty simple. If I want to, so if I have one here, let me just show you. Let me get to some of these. You guys have so many questions. Let me get to some of these examples I'm promising I was doing. So I'm just going to create a trigger script as an example, and I'm going to try to keep up with chat and do all this real quick. But basically, if I have a trigger script, which is just, I'm doing it in C# here. Now the key to triggers is you need a trigger collider and some other collider. You can't have two triggers, but one trigger and one non-trigger, and something has to have a rigid body in there. Doesn't matter what. But if I just do void on trigger enter, and I'll make this bigger here. Doop, on trigger enter. Collision. Oh, no, not collision. Collider, other. There. This will get triggered if I put this on an object with a collider. That is a trigger, and something has a rigid body, this will fire off. That's it. That's the whole thing. And then some code in there. I can instantiate, or I can do something like destroy other.gameObject, whatever. Right? That'll destroy anything that runs in there. I'm trying to scroll back up. Let's see here. So I'm trying. You guys have a lot of questions. Wait. Stuttering. Well, I'm sorry, it's scrolling so fast. I'm trying to read. Go to everything under there. Yeah, so that's where our archives is on unity3d.com. Learn, and then just go to the live training and click the archive tab. Is it possible to make an exact copy of a game like Portal with some extreme scripting in Unity? Absolutely. There's nothing you cannot make in Unity. Nothing, right? Certain engines have strengths and weaknesses, but there's nothing that you cannot make in Unity. You can't see my screen. Oh, crap. That's what I get for, like, writing and not and anything else. So here you go. That's the code. On trigger enter if I wanted to destroy something. If I just put this script on anything, any collider that has is a trigger, this will work. Sorry about that. Okay. So now I'm just scrolling down. I'm trying. Like I said, you guys have a lot of questions, and yeah, okay. Everyone's talking about the screen. Theater of the mind, absolutely. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. I was so scrolled up trying to read everyone's comments that I missed all the my screw up comments. Really, I blame you guys for distracting me. So it's all your fault. Okay, so let me get on to real quick the example here that I mentioned before the questions flare up again. One of the questions is, how do I persist data from scene to scene, right? How do I save game settings or the player or what? And there's a lot of different ways you can do it. If it's something simple like a score, you can do player prefs. You can write to the player prefs, but that's really slow, right? Writing to the player prefs and reading from the player prefs is really slow and kind of overkill, and it's got terrible security and all these things. So, yeah, this is just a QA session. So if we basically wanted to from scene to scene store all of our data, we could create something like a game manager, right? So let's say I have my scene here. This is my game scene, and I wanted to create an object which we will just call game control. All right, so we just have this game control object, and it's empty, but I'm going to create a script called game control script. And so the game control script, which I'll put on my game control object, will solely be responsible for keeping track of like the player's health, the player's armor. Now, granted, I'm oversimplifying, right? Because in games there's a lot of data. There's like health, armor, inventory, score, enemies, this, that, and the next, right? So be aware that I'm oversimplifying, but I want to kind of get the point across, all right? And so what I might have is I might have something like, I'm going to do public here, but it's not a good idea. So if I were to do like public player health equals 100, public player armor equals also 100. Ooh, I guess it would help if I said int, right, to let you know the type. And maybe public int score equals 0 or whatever. So, this game control is it's keeping track of like the player's health, the things that are persistent, right? Because enemies aren't persistent from scene to scene. Well, they might be, it depends on your game. But generally enemies aren't persistent, so I don't need to worry about them, but the player is persistent, right? And the player's score is persistent, the number of lives and whatever else, right? And so if I create one centralized location to store all of the major important data of my game, or maybe a couple centralized places, but basically I group my data up, then all I really need to do is say don't destroy on load and pass in this .game object. And so every time I change scenes, this game control will still be there with all of the data intact, which means the data is now persistent from scene to scene. I don't have to worry about player prefs. I don't have to worry about security. I don't have to worry about people messing around with it. It's fast and it's easy, right? So yeah, real quickly, I'm going to read up on chat, just making sure that I'm not missing anything, like you guys can't see my screen or something like that. Modify the... Why int and not float? Whatever, I could have been floats. I'm just making it up all the top of my head. Could you attach and carry over game objects themselves? Yeah. So if I put any script with this on it, that object that it's on persists from scene to scene. All right. Now, if you start from a different scene, this obviously won't be here, right? So it has to be there, right? So if I start from a different scene, that won't work. Which is why I always ensure that the first scene of my game creates this object. If you've ever done Ouya programming, right? So maybe an Android app intended for the Ouya has their own control class, and that's a game object, which basically is instantiated in the very first scene, which has a don't destroy on load, and it persists throughout the rest of your game. Yeah, and so kind of to show you how this works, let me go back to Unity here, and I'll go to the build settings, and I'll add this scene. Oh, I probably should save it. Scene 1. So we'll add this scene, and let's create a new scene, which we'll call scene 2. And that's fine. We'll go back to scene 1. We'll create a script. Actually, let's just use this existing script, and let's create a function called load level. And let's say application dot load level, and we'll pass in 1, which is the second scene, and we'll just call that after 3 seconds. Right? So watch what happens. So we basically have our game, we run it, we see our game controls here with all our player information, After 3 seconds, we should switch to scene 2, which, oh, I never added the extra scene to my settings. Whoops. That's a problem. Go to my build settings, add that scene. There we go. Go back to scene 1, run it again. Okay. So we've got our game control here with all of our stuff. After 3 seconds, we'll switch over to scene 2, which I don't know if it'll be obvious that I did that. No, it's not obvious that I did that. Let me go back into scene 2 and change my camera to be darker. Evil camera. There we go. Save that. Now we'll know when it switches. And so here's our game control again. After 3 seconds, we'll switch scenes. There we go. We're in a new scene, but my game control is still here with all of my data. So the data is persisted, right? From scene to scene to scene. And even if I have to destroy the player and recreate the player, I can then read the player's health and armor and everything out of this. So I can pass everything into this object, which I'm not destroying, and then pull it all back out when I need it. Obviously, if you're doing something like this, you're going to want a lot of security. Making things public is not a good idea. It's much better to have like properties so we can get and set with a level of security. But I just wanted to show you real quickly how that works. So let me catch up on chat here. Does this work if you close the game and start the game again? No. So what I'd want to do is I'd want to serialize this class and write it out to a file. Right? If it was important to persist this from game running, right, I'd want to create save files, which is actually a topic much bigger than this. I do want to do a serialized live lesson. I actually forgot about it. That was one of the ones I wanted to do relatively soon, and then I completely forgot about it until right now I'm talking about it. So I need to get that scheduled. Are we going to have a tutorial video on how to slice up loading files? Because I can't find any free web server that stream more than 3 megabytes a single file, so error unloading. No, probably not. That's a highly specialized tutorial, which probably wouldn't help a lot of people, so we probably won't cover that. That's kind of what you get with using free servers. Let's see here. Like, does the player keep his health even if the game has been restarted? No. But if the level has been restarted or anything like that, yeah. Is this required for your statement, and why? I don't believe this is required for the statement. I just like it. I don't know, it's an old habit to break because you used to program that way. I think it'll work without. Yeah, it's still persisted without the this. The this was not required. I just like it. It's my safety blanket, I guess. If you leave a room, level, and come back in, how do you keep everything the same as when you left? Example, dead monsters everywhere. You could, instead of changing scenes when you change rooms, just have multiple rooms per scene, and then the dead monsters will still be there. That's an easy way. Otherwise, you'd have to save out the entire scene state every time, and that could be cumbersome. It's a lot of data to store, but it's doable. You just have to store the positions of every object in there and their states, and then re-render them once you come back in. If you are using a separate game object to hold all the variables, then wouldn't you need to have your player script or whatever access that empty game object every scene? Yeah, pretty much. So at the loading of the scene, which is why we have loading screens and things like that, is when your objects would reacquire the game control, in this case the game control script, so that they could continue communicating. So yeah, that would have to happen every scene, but basically if you just write a little bit of code in the start methods of all of your objects to find your game control script object, then it'll just work automatically all the time. That's actually, so if you play my Global Game Jam game called Masks, that's how I handle it, right? That's how the player goes from scene to scene. Each level is a scene, and at the beginning of every level, every player, or the player, all the enemies and the blocks reacquire my game control and are able to, manage themselves from there. So if you ever want to see it in action, just check out the game Masks that I made. Let's see here. Any news about WebGL in Unity? Nothing unless something has been said. I don't know. I don't keep up with the new stuff that's coming out or happening so that I don't accidentally say something I'm not supposed to. So I have no idea what's coming out because I don't want to know. I wait for it to come out and then I learn about it. I use Mac and Windows. I know I can deploy to any platform, but if I buy Unity Pro, is the IDE license for Windows or for Mac or either? I believe it works for either. You don't buy like a Windows license or a Mac license. You just buy a license. And a license can be activated on 2 computers, I believe. So if you have like a laptop and a desktop, and it doesn't matter if it's Windows or Mac. What is Compute Shader GUI Skin and Custom Font? That is a really big question. Shaders are shaders. GUI skins are GUI skins, and custom fonts are custom fonts, I guess. Shaders they basically are attached to materials and change how they render. GUI skins allow you to change the GUI of an entire scene or object, and custom fonts are custom fonts. Could you do a tutorial or PIT? Oh, you're using the terminology. Yes, PIT, putting it together, on how to make realistic handling car with wheel colliders. We could. I'm in the process right now of figuring out real physics for a helicopter in Unity, which I want to do a live session on once I get it done. So maybe I can do cars after that. Helicopters are a pain in the butt to control. I guess that's the way they are in real life, is they're really difficult to control because there's a lot of forces at work there. But yeah, I'd love to do a realistic helicopter tutorial, which I'm working on. Everyone always says use properties, but they don't explain why. Oh, sorry. Well, let me finish reading my questions, then I'll explain to you why we use properties. And now, how do you add health or armor from another object and save it? You would just create variables for it here, or you create arrays of objects. I mean, realistically, you'd want to create classes, and the classes store data, and your game control script controls those classes, and so on and so forth. It gets very complex, right? Like I said, I'm oversimplifying here. Can you make a tutorial on how to make a self-updating game? What do you mean by self-updating game? Possibly. You'll have to explain like a game that looks for updates whenever it loads. I could make a tutorial on that. That's, again, really specific, and I don't know how, so I'd have to figure it out, because it's not anything I've ever done. Can we use lights on sprites? So the sprite shader, or the sprite material by default, accepts no light. So the answer is no. You would have to change it from being a sprite material to being like a diffuse, and then you can light it up. Do we need additional shaders except Unity's default shaders? You don't need them, no, but you can use them. Okay, let's see here. If some of us were not a bird in a past life and can't or don't tweet, how else can we send you a question? Mike at unity3d.com, but I highly encourage you to get on Twitter because it's awesome. I love Twitter. Let's see. Keep going. When is the new GUI coming? Do not know. Again, I don't. This pointless to ask me when stuff is coming, because I really don't know. Like I said, I intentionally don't pay attention to that stuff, because, you know, then I don't say anything I'm not supposed to. It will be here when it's done. How about that? Any idea when we can have mechanism animations retargeted to four-legged creatures? I don't know what you mean by any idea when. Do you mean how? We just make non-humanoid avatars, and that'll certainly work. I'm not really sure what you mean. Basic question, how do you access a variable from the engine object the C# is embedded in? From the engine object? You can do, I'm not sure what you mean, like get component to get the script and find that. What do I do at Unity? I am a screencaster for the Learn team, so I do these videos. And I also record videos, so like all the animation videos that just came out, that's my voice again. You hear me do those. So that's what I do. Can we use lights in 2D games? Absolutely. You just can't use the sprite material. Let's see. Deform a mesh in code. Yes, you can do that. Absolutely you can do that. I couldn't tell you how right now. There's a lot of math involved, but you can, and programmatically it's actually fairly simple once you nail it down. I forgot what to press on Windows to open the link on the reference when you highlight the code. I think it's Control, but I'm not sure. For movement and collision, is it easier, better to use rigid body or character controller? I like rigid body, that way all the physics just automatically works, but, you know, salt to your taste, whatever you prefer. What I mean is the game when it downloads new updates from the game you release, if you can find, for example, yeah, so, okay, so that is what I meant real. Honestly, I don't know how. I imagine, so basically when the game starts, it connects to a server, checks for an update. If it has an update, downloads the file and builds it. But I couldn't tell you from there. I'd have to play around with it. All right. Okay, so these are getting a little bit more complex in questions. So let's talk about why we'd use properties. Okay. So the problem with things being public like this, I mean, they're nice because then I can go into Unity and I can see them. But the problem is any other class can modify those, right? And that doesn't seem like a big deal if it's just you, right? Because you're like, oh, I'll never make my armor negative 100, right? But the problem is if you're working on a team with more people, they may not realize you can't do that, right? And they might do that and screw up your whole game. What if your game crashes if this happens to be a negative number or something like that? Or what if your game is really complicated and even though it is only you, you still accidentally do that because you just forgot, right? And I'm sure this is a very simple example, but like I said, we're simplifying these down because in real life we have really complicated examples, and sometimes it's really hard to remember all your own rules and stuff like that. So the better way to do it is to enforce your own rules using things like properties. So instead of doing public int player health, I might do something like make it private. I'm trying to remember the tag now. Can I do... There's a tag that I can make the private stuff still show up in the inspector. Oh man, I can't remember what it is now. I cannot remember. There's a tag there. But anyway, so we're just going to make it private. There's a tag I could apply, and I'll look it up here in a second, that allows me, even though this is private, to still see it in the inspector. It's private from all the other classes. But the better way is to make it private int player health, and then to do something like public int player health, and this is the property, right? And to get, oh man, I'm forgetting my syntax now. I think it's... yeah, get like this, which will just return health, and set, there we go, which will set player health equal to some keyword value, just like this. Okay, so this is our property here, so the scripts can't access the variable directly, they have to access player health like this. Now, again, this functions the exact same way as this, so there's no added security here, but I can have added security. So I can say something like, if value is greater than or equal to 0, then set player health to value, and that's it, right? So now I can't possibly set player health to less than 100, or less than 0. I can't give it a negative value. It's just impossible. Nothing can access this variable, and the set method will not allow it to happen, right? I think I did my syntax right there. It's not exploding on me, so I'm going to assume it's correct. So it's not necessarily just for teams. It's for you, too. Because, like, I always say this. The people that use your code are the biggest idiots in the world. Whoever uses your code is probably really, really dumb. But you use your code, which means you're also probably really, really dumb, right? If you keep that mindset, in your head, and always build in security so you can't screw it up, neither can anybody else, you'll never screw it up, right? And that's just the best way to approach it, in my opinion. And it's a rather cynical approach, but it certainly works. Just don't trust anybody, right? Even yourself. So it's not necessarily the way to do that. Serialized field, thank you very much. So yeah, if I want to do serialized field, thank you. So if I do serialized field int player health, and then I come into Unity, player health is still there even though it is private at this point, right? So thank you for whoever said serial health there. I appreciate that. But here we have our get and set, and then that all works. Let's see here. I'm trying to scroll up and see all the questions. When did you use... Okay, wait. I want to stay on the same topic here for a second. Correct, Frank. So I'm talking to Frank here now. With properties, you can add rules. Absolutely. If I'm using JavaScript, I would create a separate get and set. I mean, I can certainly do this. Public void set player health, and then in value. I can do it the long-winded way. Properties just happen to be a shorthand version of that. But basically, they're a way for me to apply rules. And with those rules, I can never screw up. Even inside this class, I would use the property instead of accessing things directly, just to prevent any possible screw-ups. Let's see here. Yeah, keep it secure, stupid, pretty much. I always tell like my students that I have in real life class that most people that use your code are like petulant 3-year-olds, and it's true, and they're all like that, and you're like that too, and you just don't realize it because it's you, but chances are you're exactly like that as well. So just popping in here, if I am just starting Unity, should I start using the beginner editor video guides and then the project rollerball game creation tutorial? Start wherever you want. Rollerball is a great place to start. Adam did those, and Adam did a great job. He's the Ant Ranch on Twitter. Check them out. They're great videos. So yeah, they're pretty awesome. So, feel free to start there. Don't start with the editor video guides. Start with, yeah, maybe it is the editor video guides. The live training is a great place to start too. So yeah, rollerball's cool. Let's see. Will you ever do procedural tutorials for things like terrain or level generation, or does anyone know any good tutorial sites? I could do procedural on terrain or level generation. I generally don't, just because there's so many scripts and assets available automatically, like just already freely available to use. I generally just default to those. I could do a session on those. It seems like there's other ones that are more pressing, more people want, but eventually maybe, sure. Can you talk about cached variables and when to use them? I don't know what you mean by a cached variable. All right, I can put an underscore in front of anything. That doesn't make it a cached variable. It just makes it have an underscore in front of it. So tell me maybe what you mean, because an underscore is just a legitimate character for variable names. So that doesn't change its property in any way. So maybe expand on that, please. A lot of people suggesting rollerball. Like I said, rollerball is great. Check it out. It's awesome. If I am learning Java, will it help me with C#? Absolutely. Any language you can learn will help you in any other language, really. Because they're all, I mean, the concepts are all the same. I always tell people that C# is like if Java and C++ had an illegitimate child, right? It would be C#. C# is pretty much like C++ with the sentiments of Java. So, yeah, Java will help a lot with that. Let's see here. What exactly does serialization does a lot of things, and I don't really want to get into a ton of it right now because I'd really like to dedicate a session to it. But basically, it's as its basis, the concept of serialization, to serialize means to kind of organize, right? So if we were organizing our data, it would go by primitive data and then complex data and then file and then folder, right? So serializing kind of just gets your ducks in a row. A lot of times in a lot of languages, serialization is used for writing classes to files, right? Which in Unity we can use it to do that too. But that's not entirely all of it. It's a pretty complicated topic, so I guess that doesn't really help you a whole lot. But basically, serialization is just about organization and simplifying, and we can use that to great effect. And I do want to do a session on that now that I'm remembering it. Any opinions on a good way to have a global action, like a Go button, that activates multiple objects in a scene? Just link them together and call a function and just activate them, right? Game control scripts are great for that. I've seen some procedural... okay, that's on YouTube. Underscore variables tend to be a coding practice where they simply mean the variable is private. Right. Or underscore in front of a variable can sometimes mean it's a member of a class, right? I don't like putting the underscore in front of there. I think it's just one extra keystroke for really no benefit. No one outside the class should be seeing your raw variables anyway. Everyone should be accessing them through properties, so the underscore is really irrelevant. It should never be used. The variable should never be seen anyway. But yeah, I mean, it can mean a lot of different things. C# versus Java. Just remember the rule of default of global and private. It's different in Java. That's correct. Objective-C. Yeah, I've never used Objective-C. Objective-C was like C++.net in my mind. It was something like that. I don't know. I've never owned an iOS device, so I've never done any iOS programming, and I don't feel like my life is any poorer for it. Is there any chance that Unity will ever make it possible for us to code in C++? You trust me, you don't want to, real MTG. C++ is my favorite language, don't get me wrong. But C++ is like a hardcore language, like where you can really screw things up. And so the fact that we can use C# and just its garbage collection happens automatically and all these things, like trust me, it's better this way. C# is where you want to be because it just makes your job easier. Yeah, like everyone's kind of agreeing that C++ would only make things more complicated. There's a lot of power there, but we're dealing with a scripted environment anyway. The C# for Unity is scripted, and same as the JavaScript. It all gets compiled into some intermediate language, which I don't really know what that is, but and then interpreted because it's a script. So C++ would garner you absolutely no benefits and just make things harder. Let's see here. We're just talking about the underscores right now. Since the property, well, so Shaggy Man says, since the property is public and private is serialized, shouldn't be showing both in the editor. No, properties don't appear in the editor. So yeah, properties are just properties. So they're kind of like hybrid functions. So functions don't appear in the editor. Now, I can edit my inspector to show properties. And I actually have videos on that. If you go to the Unity site and look up the editor videos, the intermediate editor videos, I show you how to modify the inspector to display that stuff. So you can, but by default it does not. Let's see here. Yeah, dem pointers. C++ loves its pointers. I mean, C# uses pointers too. We just don't know it, right? It just hides all that stuff from us. And C++ or C# uses the memory management just like C++ does. We just don't know about it because it's all handled for us. So it's actually pretty simple. How to load a heavy scene asynchronously. In addition, how to show a message to user when loading is done. That's a really complex question and not really one we can handle right now. But maybe something that I'll add into like an architectures or best practices video. Let's see. What's my opinion of purely functional languages? I don't know. I've not really formed an opinion. They seem to be mostly for web pages, and I don't like web pages. I think the internet's stupid. And so I generally try to avoid web programming stuff. I don't know. Purely functional languages are cool. They're neat. I don't have any use for them, but I'm sure a lot of people love them. I don't use them. Let's see. Let's see here. When doing a raycast for the player to move with a click, how do we tell the animator that the player is there, so stop playing the walking animation? So what I generally do is I check the velocity of the player, since the player would assumably have a rigid body, and when the velocity drops to 0, meaning they've reached their destination, I always just pass the velocity into the animator and let it figure out which animation to play, right? So when I'm passing in 0 for the velocity, it should kick back to the idle state. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Could you go a bit further into the use of properties, show a few more examples of their use? This is their use. I don't know what. Maybe it might be better. Doobie Frucan, which is kind of a fun name to say. If you ask me some questions and I can answer them, because this is properties. So we maybe just tell me what you want to know. Like, if I want to make a write-only property, so you're unable to read it, I can just comment out the get. If I want to make it read-only, so I can't write to it, I just comment out the set, right? Or just remove the set. Otherwise, that's properties. They don't really get all that much more complicated than that. Functions in the editor, that would be sweet. Yeah. So check out the editor videos that are on the Unity 3D website, because yeah, you can have functions in the editor. You can do all sorts of stuff in the editor. It's actually really, really cool. I'm actually curious about the book Unity Game Development in 24 Hours. How far do you think it would go about mobile gaming like Temple? So I wrote that book. I don't know if you were just making a joke, but the book Unity Game Development in 24 Hours is my book. There's actually a typo on it. Temple Run was not made with Unity. I didn't write that part. Temple Run 2 was made with Unity, but Temple Run was not. The Unity, the Game Development 24 Hours book is meant to be a completely beginner's book, assuming you don't know any scripting or anything about Unity or game development at all, and it sort of walks you through the basics. So if you're looking for like an intermediate, check that out. But or if you're looking for an intermediate, that's not really going to help you all that much, but it's great for beginners. So I guess that answers your question. I wasn't sure if you were making a joke. Sorry. Can you ever do a tutorial on how to make animating program in Unity? Like, instead of making a game, want to make an animating game. It's like making I'm not sure what you mean, Real MTG. An animating game? I don't know what you mean. Can I do a simple A star pathfinding tutorial? Yeah, maybe. I'm sure I could do that. It wouldn't be all that difficult. I don't know that it would fill up an entire tutorial, but it's basically just take the A star pathfinding algorithm and apply it to Unity. By the way, suggestions on an architecture lesson series, maybe just cover the architecture of a few different kinds of games to show good approaches. Maybe. I mean, it's a pretty complicated topic, so and I like to keep my sessions aimed towards all levels, and so I don't really want to exclude a lot of people. So maybe, like I said, it's something we're kicking around inside, but it's really not anything that we have plans for. How do I call a property? So if I want to access my player health property, I could do something like, I just write it like it was like a variable. So I could say player health equals 5. If I say player health equals 5, it kicks off the set method where the value keyword equals 5, right? Furthermore, I could do int x equals player health, like that, and again, the value 5, the get method would be called, and it would go into x, right? So, I mean, that's what you could do. We could also, here's another example of a way a property could work. So let's say I have private int experience equals, I don't know, some value, doesn't really matter what. So that's my experience points. But let's say I gain a level every, I don't know, 700 experience. Say that's my algorithm. One level every 700 experience. Well, how exactly do I know what level I'm on, right? I don't want to store the level, because that's what we get into a maintenance nightmare of recalculating every time our experience changes. So I could just create a property called public int level, have no set method, but my get method could contain return experience divided by 700. So now all I have to do is be like, hey, what level am I? I can do int x equals level, and that's my level. And my get method will actually do the calculation. I don't have a level variable, but I do have a level property, which calculates my level based on the experience, right? So that's a good way we could also use properties to mask our internal data and to prevent maintenance issues by calculating our values on the fly. So I missed a couple questions there. Let's see here. Could you give code for the raycast velocity thingy? I love technical terms, thingy. It exists in a bunch of my other videos. I'd have to look it up. I don't know if you're talking about like a raycast from an object to another object, or if you're talking about a raycast from the screen. So you might, if you could maybe rephrase that. Is there a good intermediate Unity book, especially for 2D? No. I can actually tell you, if there is a book on Unity 2D right now, it's probably not intermediate or good. It might be intermediate but not good, or good but not intermediate, just because Unity 2D has only been out not very long. And so, I mean, I do know some people have books on Unity 2D coming out, but they're probably not intermediate. They're probably beginner level, right? There aren't a lot of intermediate books because there's not a lot of an intermediate audience. Most people finish the beginner stuff and then just go to Google and figure out what the rest they need. Trying to wrap my head around properties. Are they just a way of grouping functions? Can they hold variables like structs? No, they're just like functions. So anything you can do in a function, you can do in a property. It's basically, they're just a simplified syntax for functions. What do you do in Unity? What do you need to work in Unity? I don't really know what you're asking me there. What do I do in Unity? I make games in Unity. What do I need to work in Unity? Nothing, because Unity is awesome. Why not make a program inside Unity? Because I don't want to. I'm sure you could, but that sounds boring. I mean, you're a game maker, right? Why would I use a game software to write a program? That's make games, man. Blow things up. I don't understand why you'd want to do anything other than that. Let's see. I have a first-person shooter pause script that I made, but when the game's paused, I can still look around. Any idea why? If you're using the first-person controller, it's probably just because that's how the scripts in the first-person controller work. You'd have to disable them with your pause script. Is it possible to use colliders on objects just for the example hit detection purposes? They seem quite heavy passively. Well, yeah, colliders are for hit detection, absolutely. So I'd make them triggers, right, just to know when things are hit. Actually, the physics system is actually pretty darn efficient. It puts things to sleep when they're not moving, when things aren't around. So it's pretty darn efficient. So, but colliders are for hit detection. Otherwise, you can raycast. I mean, those are pretty much your two options. How to access a class which is not extended by mono behavior, just instantiate an object of it. As long as it's in the same namespace or they're using the same namespace, they'll be fine. Sorry, I'm trying to read. It's moving fast. In a 3D third-person shooter type game, could you describe how you'd go about animating the main player? I'm assuming it would be different to importing a sprite sheet. So check out the animation videos I just posted yesterday. We talk all about the animator and animation, the mechanism system, and that's basically what you do. Also check out in the sample assets. By the way, if you guys haven't checked out the sample assets, they're fantastic. Go to the sample assets and download the sample assets. They're free and they're on the asset store, and they have a third-person controller in there with all these animation stuff. It's actually pretty slick. Go check it out. Once you pass the beginner level, I highly recommend just making stuff, right? That's the way you get better, is to use your skills. Is it me or the video just lagged? The video is super lagged. I don't know why, but it's like a 20-second lag. Do properties allow for any other functions apart from get set? No. Properties are get set only. Why would you write a property over writing a function? Properties are just faster to write. I mean, look at this. It just, I don't know. It just condenses it all. They all have the same name. I don't have to remember get this name, set this name, right? I just call this name, right? It's one function essentially as opposed to two. Just makes it easier. Does using player house property use up more memory? No, it doesn't use any more memory. You could I've seen a lot of tutorials using the first-person controller. Know of any that go over the third-person controller? Not really, but once you kind of know the basics, you know, of the mechanism system, then it's pretty easy to figure out what they're doing. A quick question about how you would implement a dodge function in 2D. Player dodges an enemy and passes through the enemy. My approach is to use the coroutine that disables the collider 2D, because this leads to some problems with floor and wall collision. How would you do it? That is a really good question. So, that is a really good question. So, if I wanted to pass through the enemy, I could turn off their collider. I could turn off my collider, the collider of the player, and then just suspend the player. I could turning them to triggers wouldn't work. You could turn off gravity and then just turn off the colliders and move them. But that could lead to some problems if you like dodge on an edge of a cliff or something like that, where you like float in the air for a second there. I don't know. I'd have to play around with that. Nothing comes to mind, but that's kind of because I'm being put on the spot. I'm sure in a quiet environment by myself, I could come up with something pretty quick. You just need to, or you could just ignore collisions from enemies momentarily, something like that. Can JavaScript and C# interoperate using the same variables? Sort of, not really. So JavaScript can call C# script functions, and C# scripts can call JavaScript functions, and all that goodness. It's about which order they're compiled in. So that's key. And so, like, if you wanted to access C# scripts using JavaScript, you need to ensure that your C# scripts were compiled first, and vice versa. It can get a little complicated, but ultimately you can kind of do whatever you want there. What's a good practice to bullet hit detection with travel time? Just raycast, right? Send out a bullet and raycast a ray that gets longer and longer over time until you hit something. Yeah. Oh, hey, I'm caught up on questions. I wasn't expecting that. Well, at this point, it's been our hour, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the session. So thank you, everyone, for who participated. I don't normally post these online, like the hangouts, but we did cover a lot of cool stuff in here. So maybe I will post this one. But anyway, thank you. Here, let me read any questions that came in. Is there an existing video on handling user clicking on an object in the scene? That's actually really simple. So, I mean, just if I put a void on mouse click, no, wait a minute, void on mouse button down. That's not right either. Oh man, now you're. It's super simple. 1 second here. It's just on mouse down. Whoops. Unity on mouse down. Do something. This object was clicked. That's it. I mean, it's really simple. And then this object was clicked, right? Obviously, put that on something that's not a trigger, but yeah. Let's see here. Just making sure there are no other questions. So the next session is next Monday. Like I said before, I will promote that one so we don't miss it. I do apologize for anyone who came for the scripting primer. I completely forgot to promote that, and so we didn't have the turnout we normally do, and I do apologize for that. Next week I will promote it. Next Monday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, so whatever time zone you're in. You know, be there, same time as today. We will cover the scripting stuff, which will be like if statements and loops, but we go very slow, so it's all about beginner programming. And then after the week after that, we will do the putting it together scene composition. Go check that one out too, because I'm pretty excited about that. Let's see here. What keyboard do I use? I use a Razer mechanical keyboard. I don't know what kind, but it's loud. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to devolve into conversations about keyboards and whatnot, so we'll just go ahead and end here. But thanks again, everyone, for sticking around and asking your questions. If I missed your questions, I'm sorry. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter. Again, I'll put this up at Unity3D, at Mike Geig, which is me, at Will Goldstone, and at the Ant Ranch. If you had any questions and I didn't answer them, please follow up. Chat got a little crazy there for a little bit, so it was kind of hard to see everybody's question. And otherwise, you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you.